pandemic of violence floods the streets of major cities as cases of the media-dubbed murder virus, MV20, soar, causing those infected to go on killing sprees. Caught in the middle, police detective Angela Miller finds her only trustworthy ally in the self-proclaimed psychic PI, Gerald Henry. As the two try to navigate the violence, they are drawn into New Age guru Abramelin Harvest's plot to heal the planet. Harvest's missive?
The world is sick, and humanity is the infection.
The cure? Murder. From the twisted mind of Shawn C. Baker, author of A Collection of Desires and Shadow Play in Book 1, Kim and Jesse, comes his most vicious novel yet, Murder Virus. Available where books are sold.
Welcome to another episode of A Most Horrible Library. I'm Shawn Charles Baker.
And I'm Chris Saunders.
And we're here to talk about all things dark and scary in the literary world. So, Chris, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I've been doing a bit of reading here and there, as it probably should for our literary horror podcast. I've been listening to some music and watching TV.
Nice.
So now
we're here to talk about Fleetwood Mac's discography.
Well, that is a most horrible library.
Nice.
So.
I like Fleetwood.
I know. I wish I would have had something a little better.
I know. Well, that was my fault. I should have done something like, we're here to talk about Celine Dion's discography. There you go.
Yeah, this is the podcast where we talk about all things Bono.
Oh God, damn.
So in his latest book,
the children are starving.
He wrote it for the starving children.
Open me another bottle of that $5,000 glass champagne, would you? Did you get me a new album? I put it in your iTunes when you weren't looking, you cunt. Oh. So right off, no, I can't. Right off the bat, I wanted to this is kind of like a follow-up to a previous episode. So, after we interviewed Jeremy Hawn, I subscribed to his Patreon, and I haven't had a lot of time to spend time in there, but maybe last week, one night, I spent about a good 2 hours tooling around, and it's a fantastic Patreon. And we just launched a Patreon for the Horror Vision, and the background for the listeners is I'm a little bit uneasy doing a Patreon thing because I'm trying to figure out what we can offer people, and I don't like asking for money, but I gobbled up our Patreon for us.
Well, that's why you have me here, Shawn.
Well, that's true.
I will happily ask for their money.
Nice. But I want to give something back, and really the only reason I even thought to do it was because we found out there was another podcast using the same name that started about a year after us. And so I'm like, I'm going to get every single form of media with our name that I can. So blah, blah, blah. I'm talking about the Horror Vision now, Most Horrible Library.
For those of you who don't know, we do have another side podcast, or is this a side podcast? I don't know. I mean, anyway, we do have another podcast that is called the Horror Vision, and same kind of premise as this is here, but it is more of it's movies, television, things of the visual nature, I should say. Well, actually, comics are visual too.
And I guess this would be a good time just to lay it out there for everybody listening. Like, please, if you're going to start a podcast called A Most Horrible Library or The Most Horrible Library, don't. Just pick something different. Just saying. So anyway, so that's why we have Patreon. But so I spent some time in his Patreon, and it really inspired me. I mean, it's fantastic, and his hauntology stories.
Hauntology, yeah, but it is spelled the hauntology.
Yeah, but
that lucky son of a bitch.
I know,
He's
right?
got the perfect name for that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But it's really, really cool. And they run from like, some are like a single page and some are like, more. I think the longest one I've read, I haven't read many of them, but the longest one I read so far is maybe 5 or 6 pages. And then he also has videos like that kind of time lapse of him inking, which I found is one of the most calming things I've ever experienced, just watching this man ink.
It's like a spooky Bob Ross, I'm just gonna ink some bloody little gore.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's very happy. It's very happy blood.
Bob Ross is the talk of the town this week. But we'll save that for the other podcast.
Yeah.
So if people out there dig Red Mother and they dig Beauty, which is I believe he just finished the final issue of, so I don't think it's come out yet, but it's imminent. And I'm looking forward to getting back to that one because I've only ever read the first trade. But if you dig his work, his podcast is, his Patreon is chock full of really, really cool, good stuff. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Mm-hmm. Very nice.
Other than that,
what you been reading, Shawn?
Well, so one of the things, and I'm not going to go too deep into this because I would eventually like to have Anthony from the Horror Vision on this show to talk about this. He lent me a bunch of stuff, and one of them is the early 90s Fantico prestige format Night of the Living Dead adaptation. So it's basically a comic adaptation of George Romero. And, so at first it's black and white. The art's pretty cool. It fits. But at first I was like, oh, is this just a straight adaptation? Okay. I mean, I've seen the movie so many times, but yeah, I guess. Sure. But here's the thing. So for instance, Dwayne Jones' character, when he first comes into the movie and he meets up with, Barbara, he talks about how he was at the gas station or the diner or whatever down the road when he first saw what was going on, and this truck comes screaming in and all this like mayhem ensues, but he tells her about it, right? Well, in the comic, they actually show you it.
Oh.
So it really actually
expands. So it expands upon.
Yeah. So that was really cool. So that was, I think, in the second issue or second volume. I've yet to read the next ones, but I'm really looking forward to it because I was like, oh, so that's where this is going to pay dividends, right? So it was pretty cool. I guess they're pretty hard to come by. I don't know if there's a digital version out there, but this Fantico company, I don't know much about them. I was on their website. They have a really weird kind of offering of stuff. They're small imprint, but definitely worth checking out. And luckily, I don't know what these run, but I'm just happy that Anthony had them and lent them to me because it's, even if that's all I get out of it was seeing Dwayne Jones, like what his character went through. It was worth the price of admission.
Yeah. Now I actually, speaking of, and it's kind of one of these. It's one of these things that I'm going to eventually delve into, that I have sitting on my bookshelf in my library there. It is it's John Russo, who was the co-creator,
yes,
with George Romero. He wrote the novelization.
Yes.
But the book that I have, it is both Night of the Living Dead and his original Return of the Living Dead, the novelization. So it's not, the movie Return of the Living Dead, but it is basically it's based on his original treatment for Return of the Living Dead.
So A, I didn't even know that existed, but B, let me ask you, and I'm not sure that you'll know this, but if you do, the first thing that I'm curious about is was this something that was penned around the time of like when they were going to do Dawn of the Dead as a possible sequel, or were this literally like in the mid 80s when Return of the Living Dead, what is it? Dan O'Banion, I think, famously penned the script. Like, was this, they went to Russo first and said, hey, can you write us something that would bring back that series? And then they ended up going a different way.
Okay, so the Return of the Living Dead, the book, it was written in 1977, and which served as a direct sequel to Night of the Living Dead. The book, it's set 10 years after the original zombie uprising, and life is supposedly back to normal. But after a horrific bus crash, the dead begin to rise again to feast on the living. Russo, he wrote the book with the intention of developing it into a movie property. The resulted 1985 film, also called Return to the Living Dead, obviously, it abandoned Russo's plot and it took more of a kind of slapstick approach.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, I definitely... Return of the Living Dead is one of those things I had to grow to like.
I loved it. I mean,
the fact that it didn't deliver on the Romeros, because I'm so particular about zombie stuff, and to me, those first three Romero are just Bible. Like that's the shit. And so I was just like, what is this? And then later I was like, wait, this is pretty great, honestly.
Mm-hmm. God, I really wish that I could recall what the name of the book is that contains both of them. So it's just called Undead.
Oh, okay.
So that's a very easy thing to remember.
Now, is that readily available, or is that like one of your super finds?
A bit of both.
Okay.
So I believe it is readily available. Yes, you can get it. You can get a paperback on Amazon for $11. You can get $6 for the Kindle. I actually did do a super find that was a limited hardcover edition. That's actually signed by John Russo. But yeah, I mean the book, it was out of print for 30 some odd years.
Wow.
So yeah, I guess up until it just kind of just the kind of zombie underground once it kind of became more mainstream, they ended up putting it out. So
all right, that's definitely something I'll pick up, because I would love to read that.
Yeah. Not a very long book. It's under 300 pages. But it's one of the ones that like I've had just kind of sitting because I'm so backlogged.
Yeah, stuff.
You've seen my library, Shawn.
Yeah.
You know exactly how.
Yeah, for the listeners, I would say that I have thought before, while gazing either at your unbelievable library or dealing with the spatial issues of my own, that the real impetus for calling this a most horrible library is that it's horrible to have to figure out, like, you're adding like these extensions to your bookcases. I'm trying to figure out where to put stuff. I mean, it's but it's not horrible, actually. I mean, I do notice, especially with my comics, like or books, really, just the rearranging and the cataloging and the it's a Zen thing, man. It's for
the listeners, I'll have to post a picture in the comments, because I just recently hit a milestone of having 1,200 titles.
Holy, this is so we now have an Instagram for this podcast. So there is a Most Horrible Library on Instagram. Look us up, follow us, and that's where you should post your pictures.
Yeah,
that would be fantastic. But it is something. Seeing it, I hadn't been to your place since before the pandemic, and so when I popped by a couple weeks ago, I I couldn't stop staring at it. It's like, oh my God, that's, life goals.
Yeah. I had to add height extensions going all through. And I'll post a picture of the library, and then I'll post a picture of the pile of things that aren't on any shelves and the pile of things that are cleverly hidden underneath the table. Nice. With a nice tablecloth going all the way down, because I need to figure out if I can do a double height extension.
Oh man,
you need a ladder at that point. But
yeah. Right. Wow. Another thing I wanted to mention, and I've been actually meaning to bring these up for a while. So one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was late last year, early this year, I read 2 novels by Stephen Graham Jones. So I don't know, are you familiar with him at all?
Possibly, but I am terrible with names.
So the book, he had 2 books come out last year. He's very prolific. He's kind of in the weird fiction horror camp. He kind of pals around with Paul Tremblay and Laird Barron and those guys. And man, okay, so the first one I read is Night of the Mannequins, and it's a slasher book. And I really struggle with how to pitch this to people, because when I read it, I went in thinking, okay, so there's like this mannequin that's like killing people, which just in and of itself sounded fascinating.
Yeah, it's like Chucky, but grown up.
But kind of, but but that's not really what it is. And I really, I don't want to. It's like I want to spoil it because I want people to read it. I want to talk about it because it is literally hysterical the way that he tells this story. And like when you see what's happening, it's like, oh my God, this is insane. But it is so worth people's time. And I read the thing in like a day. It's such a quick fucking read. And so it is.
What's the rough synopsis of it?
So it's first person, and you get the narrator and his group of friends. So one of them works at a movie theater in their small town, and what they do is they'll sneak into the movies, and the manager of the theater realizes this, and they all get barred. So they have this idea to play a joke on the manager, and so the narrator describes how like the summer before or whatever, they're high school kids, summer before, they had found this mannequin like down by the riverbed behind their houses, and they just made it like an unofficial member of the group. So they dressed it up and they posted in pictures and blah 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 blah, and they have a name for it. The name escapes me. It's been a couple months, and then at the end of the summer, it just kind of ended up getting left in one of their garages. So they're like, you know what, let's do this. So they all put on disguises and they disassemble the mannequin, and everybody smuggles in one piece of the mannequin, and they go into the movie theater, and then they assemble the mannequin and put it in the middle of the seating. And then after the movie starts, the practical joke is one of them is going to go out and complain that there's this guy in there and he's talking real loud, and they usher him out. And so the manager comes in to remove him, and they're waiting for like the moment where the manager goes over to the mannequin.
It's goodbye.
And like, and then nothing happens. And so they're weirded out, and then the movie ends. And when they look, the mannequin has left. And then after that, each one of them starts to die.
Go on.
But it's not it's not what it seems.
Okay.
And I'm not going to spoil it, but it is when you get what's happening, it's such a mind fuck, and it's just brilliant. I loved it so much, so much. It was probably out of the new fiction I read in 2020, it was probably my favorite. Then his other book that came out last year that has a ton of buzz behind it that's The Only Good Indians, as in our dead Indians, right? And so he is Native American, and it takes place with a cast, like it opens with a Native American off the reservation being killed in, like, he gets in a skirmish outside of a bar, but it's not he's running from the guys that are trying to kick his ass, and something else kills him. And then so you go to another character, and it's the same kind of thing where it's like these 4 guys that were a group of friends growing up on the reservation, and they had gone out. So there's a thing where you can only hunt certain animals at certain times a year, and also they'll do this thing where, like, if the population's low for the particular animal, they will curtail your ability to hunt it, and only people who use it for food or like senior members of the community are allowed. And they go out anyway, regardless of this restriction, and they kill some animals. And then the idea is that because of that, the animal spirit is picking them off later in life. It's very good. Night of the Mannequins was still my favorite, but the only good in it, he's got a really odd tone. There's always an element of humor and camaraderie in it, but then there's these, like, twisted through it is that Native American kind of mythology, and when it's violent, it's fucking violent or gory. Like, it's wow. There are a couple scenes where I was like, oh my God, like, kind of takes your breath away. So, man, he's something. He's got a ton of books. I'm looking forward to. Again, I'm backlisted, but I got quite a few that are coming up. Later this year, I plan on reading. So he's definitely somebody, and he's only grown in popularity. So I feel like we're going to get more and more, and maybe some movie adaptations, which would be great. That whole group of guys, Laird Barron especially. These guys that kind of operate in this pocket between horror and weird fiction. And weird fiction is really, that's Lovecraft kind of started it, and August Derleth and Robert Howard. It goes back to the 20s and 30s, and it's horror, but it's cosmic horror. But there's so much good stuff there right now, and it definitely feels a little bit more literary than, this is me kind of being a pretentious prick, but I love genre stuff, but there's some, and I enjoy definitely, there's horror novels like The Maul of Cthulhu, for whatever reason, springs to mind. I read, 10 years ago, but it's very genre. I still loved it. There's nothing, I couldn't say a bad thing about it. But this stuff, there's like a certain, I don't know, there's just a level of expertise employed that I really, maybe just as a writer, I just really identify with these guys, and I look to them kind of as role models. So Stephen Graham Jones. Yeah. Those, both of those sound awesome. Dude, Night of the I want people to read Night of the Mannequins just so they can have the feeling, the experience I had where it was like the moment I got what was going on, I was like, oh my fucking God, it's hysterical and twisted, and like, it's just nuts. And it's such an interesting, fresh spin on it's like, it's a slasher because it's somebody picking off a group of people one by one. Sure. But it's not like, it's not like, what you think of like slasher, you tend to think of like 80s slasher, right? So it's not quite like that, but yeah, it's great. I can't recommend either of those enough, but especially Night of the Mannequins. Nice. Well, that's definitely one I will have to pick up there. What about you? What have you read? Well, and this is going to paint me in a bad light, but I finally got around to reading Stephen King's novella, The Mist. I haven't read it, so I'm in a worse light than you. So there you go. Aha! Yeah, so it is a, it's only a, oh gosh, what is it now? 41-year-old story. It originally came out in 1980. Can't read it all. I didn't realize it went back that far. Yeah. A lot of people are going to be way more familiar with the 2007 film by Frank Darabont, starring Thomas Jane.
and literally half the cast of the first season of The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
It was a great story. Obviously, they did have to make some changes for the film, because you're going from that novella, and it really is more of a slow burn. It kind of starts to ramp up, whereas the film kind of jumps straight into the action of it.
Which always bothered me, actually. But I don't... The thing about the film that saves it for me is the ending, obviously, which I know is different. You can talk about that. But the movie, I feel like literally they're in that store. Somebody's like, look, there's a mist outside. And then the next beat is everybody's fucking batshit crazy. And there's it reminds me a lot of 30 Days a Night, where the movie does a better job of giving you the passage of time than the comic, which makes no sense to me. And it's the same thing. Well, it's the reverse. I feel like the movie just, it doesn't set in. It's just all of a sudden like, okay, it's crazy. Boom, go.
Yeah. Well, with the novella, it is that same kind of thing. Okay. So just for those of you who haven't read the story or seen the film, the basic premise is, in this small rural town up in the Maine. Is it? You know what?
I'm just assuming because it's Stephen King.
Yeah, it probably is somewhere in New England. There's this really, really bad storm that happens, and the next day, the father, son, wife, they're inspecting their property to see, look at the damage, and they realize, okay, shit, there is fair amount of damage. So he's going to have to go into town, get some supplies to, just to kind of fix things up a little bit. But as he's kind of doing his inspection, he looks across the lake and he sees this big, thick layer of fog that's slowly rolling over. And he can't help but think, well, that's really odd, that it's not really the season for the fog, and this is really thick fog. It's almost like a cloud. But he doesn't really think that much of it. And later on, they go down into town to go to so they're at a supermarket. The father and son, they left the wife at home, and while they're there, this same layer of fog rolls in up to the point where it comes, right up to the glass, and they cannot see 5 feet away from the glass. And everyone in the store is kind of like, well, that's like, what's going on out there? And it is true to the original book. That element of unease does come across the patrons of the supermarket pretty quickly. And but the action does, in the film, it starts ramping up pretty quickly. Somebody does come running into the store, screaming about like, oh, there's something in the mist, don't go out there. Which that does happen in the book, but it is kind of pushed back a bit further. But you don't really get any of the weird creature reveals until later in the book.
Okay.
So, again, it's a 41-year-old novella, so I am going to obviously delve into some spoilers here. The movie's been out for 15 years. The story's been out for 40.
Right. So if you're listening and you don't know this stuff, just come back later, but go see it. Go see it or read it.
Long story short, there was a nearby military base that they had been doing some kind of experiments at, and something happened. Experiments went haywire, and they punched open a window into another dimension. So all of these creatures and their atmosphere and everything has been slowly spilling out into our world. So now all of the patrons, they're all trapped in the supermarket with, basically humans went from being top of the food chain to the very bottom.
Right.
And I loved this movie. It was probably one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations. Looking back on it now, 15 years later, the CGI is a bit dodgy, but we can forgive that.
Yeah.
But I really love the otherworldliness of it, because for all intents and purposes, It is just your world is suddenly flooded with monsters. But I mean, essentially, they're just animals doing what animals do.
Right.
You know, they're not evil. There's no malicious intention behind them. It's just like, oh, food.
Yeah.
There is a very Lovecraftian element to it. And it's really funny because I feel in more recent years, the story has become more prevalent in our society. I know it's been, the inspiration for the classic video games, Half-Life 2.
Oh, I didn't know that.
A couple of years ago when they were firing up the Super Hadron Collider, over at
CERN.
Yeah. That, there was a lot of speculation that like, oh no, they're going to punch a hole. It's going to be just like The Mist and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So getting to the ending in the novella, it does have a more ambiguous ending. The main protagonists, they manage to escape the supermarket. They get into a car and they slowly make their way out of town. They end up at, taking refuge in Howard Johnson's.
Oh, wow.
Joe. The whole time the narrator, he's been writing down his story of what's been going on, and he decides to leave this on the counter at the Hojo, hoping that, at some point somebody will find this. Doesn't know who. Essentially, he finds this old kind of ham radio, and he's scanning through different broadcasts, trying to find out what's going on in the rest of the world. He can't really find anything, but he thinks that he might have heard one word come through that was somebody saying Hartford, Hartford, Connecticut. So the book ends with him kissing his sleeping son on the forehead, saying just two words to him, saying, Hartford and hope. So, so it leaves it really ambiguous, they are alive and that they're going to try to make their way down to Hartford, Mm-hmm. So from a literary standpoint, I do like that ending because it gives me that false sense of hope
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
maybe the story will be continued, and we can see some more tales in this new world, so to speak. Now, the film famously changed that ending.
Yeah.
I love Frank Darabont's choice to end it the way that he did. So the film ends with essentially the car runs out of gas. They're still in the middle of this mist. They know that, literally everywhere that they go, there's going to be some kind of monster, creature, animal thing that's going to try to eat them. The main character looks down. He's got a pistol in his hand, 4 or 5 people in the car, and he only has 3 or 4 bullets. And they kind of all silently look around and agree, they're like, yeah, let's just take the easy way out. So systematically, he shoots and kills every survivor in the car, including his, 5-6-year-old son, to spare him the fate of being eaten alive by who knows what. And then he's out of bullets. He gets out of the vehicle, just, waiting to get killed by something or other. And as he's doing that, a military convoy drives by. The whole military, they're flamethrowers, they're killing these things left and right, and the mist starts to dissipate. And he just, realizes that if he just would have waited a few minutes, they all would have been saved. And it's just such a bleak ending that, like, it just really makes you just go, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Visually, that was a great ending. It would have been depressing as hell to read that in the story. So I guess it boils down to, Frank Darabont did the best job that he could have adapting that to the film, to the silver screen. But King's ending was great too, in that, it really left the door open for more. Right. 41 years later, I don't think he's touched in on it at all. Although there are a lot of theories that some of the creatures that are mentioned in the mist, that they do pop up throughout King's Dark Tower series.
Oh, interesting.
Which I haven't read all of them. I know you have, Shawn.
Yeah.
So I'll have to research a little bit more to say, hell yeah, you remember this from this or any of that.
I don't remember anything in it that would overtly translate, but then again, I haven't read the story. And so the stuff in Darabont's, obviously like monsters on screen are usually going to be, you're going to embellish it a little bit just for the visual presentation. So it could be a matter of that, or I could just be, not remembering something because it's been whatever year the last Dark Tower book came out. That was the last I've read a Dark Tower book. So
I just decided to do a quick little look up here. They say that it is likely that the Arrowhead Project, which that was the name of the military project that started the Mist, was able to create a thinny.
Oh, there you go.
This thinny allowed monsters to escape the Tudash space. I don't know what that is either. To roam free.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's also a creature resembling the tentacle creature that is in the Mist, is featured in The Wind Through the Keyhole.
Okay, which I didn't read. That's the posthumous after the Dark Tower.
But there's one really cool visual throw to the Dark Tower series in the film is the main character in the film, David Drayton. He's an artist and played by Thomas Jane. Thomas Jane, he's sitting there doing a painting, and the painting that he's doing is a portrait of Roland standing before the Dark Tower.
Oh, wow.
So if you go back and watch the film in the opening scene, or opening couple scenes there, yeah, he's sitting there painting, and the painting is, in fact, done by real life artist Drew Struzan.
Okay.
Which evidently all of the characters' artwork in the film is Drew Struzan's artwork. In fact, he even did the artwork for the poster for the Mist. That's
interesting. All of the Dark Tower books, if I remember correctly, or at least I know the first three that I have illustrations, and I'm pretty sure they're all. All. Huh?
They all have illustrations of some sort.
And I think Michael Whalen does most of them, and people will know him. I remember when I looked him up and I was like, oh my God, it's the same guy. He did like the Sepultura album cover, Chaos AD, and I think he probably did Arise as well. Both album covers, like Hall of Fame, in my opinion. He did the classic. I don't know. It must have existed before it was used as art and album covers. But if in the 90s you bought any H.P. Lovecraft, there were always in these volumes that had this very gray toned art that had just random abominations, like black cloaked figures and giant eyes and tentacles and this and that. It was used for the covers of all of those H.P. Lovecraft collections. I can't think of the publisher that did that. And then it was also used as a band I'm not a fan of, but Obituary used it as an album cover. I forget which album, whatever their most iconic album is, it's that album cover. But yeah, and he's done a bunch of other stuff, but so I associate all the Roland or Dark Tower art with being Michael Whalen.
But it's not, though. If you go and pick up your copy of The Wolves of Kala, all of the artwork in that, you know who it is?
No.
Bernie Wrightson.
Oh, now see, I'll have to go back and look at that's interesting. So maybe Whalen maybe he's only the third. I know he's the third book for a fact. But maybe he's only, so maybe they switched artists for every book.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. I know I haven't gone through, but Wrightson, he does do it in that same kind of style. It's not like his Frankenstein, the pen.
Right.
And it's not like, when he did the artwork for the uncut version of Stephen King's The Stand.
Right.
It is in that same black and white pen and ink style, but it's more on par with if you've ever read Stephen King's what is it? Cycle of the Werewolf.
Yeah, he illustrated that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it is in that same where they're essentially like paintings.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's been a tangent.
Yeah. Hey. So that's about it for what I've read. What else?
I have been reading. I'm right in the middle of. There was a 6-issue series put out by Dark Horse, written by Peter Tomasi with art by Ian Bertram. It came out in 2016. That was called The House of Penance. I'll just go ahead and read the little byline of it. The Winchester House, famous for its original owner's bizarre compulsion to incorporate a multitude of architectural curiosities. But as the bereaved Sarah Winchester's workers toil on stairways to nothing and doors to nowhere, a mysterious stranger arrives, and he could make Sarah's demons all too real. Yeah, so essentially, it tells you the story of the ever ongoing building of the Winchester Mystery House out here in California that, was famously owned by Sarah Winchester, the widow of the head creator, I don't know what you want to call it, of the Winchester Arms Company.
Yeah, the original pistol, right?
I think they were rifles.
Oh,
I think that was their big thing, but they might have done pistols too. I don't know.
I don't even know if they were called pistols back then. I don't know that a 6-shooter is called a pistol. I realize
revolvers, maybe.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. Revolver.
And this is based in historical accuracy, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but she believed that she was being haunted by the restless spirits of people who were killed with guns that were made by her late husband's company. And so she would have construction on her house for 24 hours a day for about 20 years.
Yeah.
In order to basically trick these spirits into not being able to find her. She was famous for sleeping in a different bedroom every night so as not to constantly be in the same place.
Wow.
And, she was famous for also saying that the constant hammering, that she believed that would replicate the sound of gunshots and would help to kind of confuse the spirits.
Oh, wow.
Who were killed by gunshots. But yeah, so this is just a really interesting, take on that. It really does steep into the supernatural and just all these people's, their own personal demons.
That's fascinating. It looks fantastic. I had not heard of it, or if I'd heard of it at the time, I don't remember hearing about it, but after you mentioned it earlier, I looked it up. The art looks fantastic. Tomasi is a great writer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in trying to pick this up and read it. And the Winchester House is just insane. I mean, have you ever been there?
Now, I have not, no, but I have read a bit about it. And I do know that, if you go onto Google Maps and you type in, the Winchester Mystery House, you can see the overhead view of it. You can do all kinds of little visual, tours on there and to see just how crazy it is. It's literally staircases that go nowhere.
Seriously.
It's a door on like a, third or fourth story. You open it up and it just drops straight outside.
Yeah. Or there's wall behind it. It's pretty I was there once, probably 17 years ago, and it's unnerving. It's very, very cool.
And it's also about half the size of what it used to be. There was an earthquake that had happened and knocked a bunch of the original parts of it down. So if you go there now and you look at it on Google, keep that in mind that it did used to be a lot larger, and a lot crazier than.
Yeah, it's still pretty crazy. But
oh, absolutely.
I think somebody needs to buy it and start that shit up again.
Right? Just keep building.
Yeah, keep building.
Now, Shawn, there is one thing that I did want to touch on here. Mm-hmm. You, my friend, you have a new novel that is currently out. that just came out, and it is called Murder Virus.
Yes.
I have not read this yet. I would like to read it soon, but in the meantime, tell me, what is it about?
Well, it just came out. So this is something, if the title seems, at first I didn't like this title. It was originally called
Killing
The Secret
Flu.
Yes, Killing Flu. Oh my God, that's amazing. Well, damn it, Chris, now I wish I thought of it. It was originally called The Secret Life of Murder. And after struggling, when I started writing in the early 2000s, after struggling with something that'll probably never see the light of day and went through many iterations, when I moved out here to LA, in early 2007, I received a phone call. It was like a Saturday. I was off work and cell phone rang, and it was a friend who I hadn't really talked to in quite some time. And he told me that another friend of ours had died.
Oh.
And it was I've lost quite a few friends in my life, but there was something about this. It was, and it was bizarre circumstances I won't get into, but it was so weird, and I was so not expecting it. Also, the person that delivered the message, it was a really weird phone call. Now, he too is no longer with us, so I don't want to speak ill of him, but it was really weird where it was like he told me that he died, and he's like, "Oh, so like, what are you up to?" I mean, it was just very odd.
Yeah. Everybody deals in grief their own way.
Exactly.
It throws me back to there's an episode of Modern Family where, for whatever reason, the mother of the family, anytime anybody would die, her immediate reaction would just be to laugh. So she's sitting there delivering the news. Yeah, Mr. So-and-so across the street, he died. And that was her own way
of dealing.
Yeah, so that happens. But so go on.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I had been looking to write something, and I was also really reading a lot. I had fallen into reading a lot of Bret Easton Ellis, and that had a major impact on me and an influence. And so I started writing something that starts with somebody getting a phone call where their friend died. And I was working at Borders Books at the time, and it was not a great job. The people I worked with were fantastic, and it was great working around books.
Retail, though.
But retail, and just especially, like, you think that the people that shop in a bookstore would be a better experience. It was awful. It was abysmal. And so the book started to turn into something where, you have these horrible interactions during the day, you come home and you kill those people with your fiction at night. Mm-hmm. So it became like kind of a cathartic thing. And what the way that I staged all this, well, I guess what the book is about then, and is still about, since I've rewritten it, and I'll get into that, but it's about a book that when you read it, it gives you this impulse where you just start killing people. And I guess as I was working on it, or after I originally finished, I think I finished the first iteration of it in like 2008. I wrote it fairly quickly, and it was one of those where when it ended, I didn't even expect that it was about to end. I remember, like, I didn't realize, I'm about to write the ending. It's just like I wrote this sentence and I was like, holy shit, that was it. And I just remember feeling like so empowered by that, like knowing that whereas the thing I had been working on before, I just was a mess and I couldn't end it and blah, blah, blah. So I had always known that this would be something. It was the first thing I ever wrote, the first manuscript where I'm like, I think I can do something with this eventually. So I put it on the back burner for, over 10 years. Mm-hmm. And then last year in March, because essentially the book becomes about a pandemic of violence, and nobody knows how to stop it. Only a few people are aware of, like, okay, they get to the bottom of how it's spreading and whatnot. And so last year in March, when the COVID thing started, the first weekend where it was shelter in place. Yeah. I got up super early, and I just remember I was standing in a Trader Joe's, the one right down the street from us by the Bug, or down the street from me. And I have headphones on and I'm just watching people panic shop, right?
Yeah. I remember that.
And it was such a feeling of uncertainty. And I just thought to myself, I would be a fucking fool not to go back right now and rewrite this and use everything going on in the world today. And that's what I did. So I spent the next 3 months, I kept the bulk of the original manuscript, but I altered it so that, and eventually it moves beyond being spread by the book anyway. I don't want to get into the mechanics of it, but it, in order for it to reach pandemic proportions, it evolves. And and so you start with an incident in LA, and actually the opening was originally a short story that I wrote last year. And then I was like, oh my God, it fits exactly. It's the same thing. So I just married them, and it starts with a police detective in Los Angeles, and they become aware, her and her partner become aware that there's these mass shootings, and again, pulled, right from headlines.
Yeah, right from the headlines. Yeah.
And they're trying to get to the bottom of what's going on. And she realizes holy shit, I think this is being spread by a book. And then you go from LA to Seattle, and the other so Angela Miller is one of the protagonists. Yes. And then the other protagonist is Gerald Henry, and he is a psychic private investigator. So he gets a phone call. He also lives in LA. His friend, childhood friend, is dead, and he goes to Seattle to see, because it's mysterious circumstances.
Sure. He wants to investigate. He's
exactly something
to the case.
Something doesn't sit right. And then they end up being thrown together, and there's some other people involved as well. But as the whole city of Seattle just becomes awash in just violence, and then it also fed into after the all the riots last year also fed into this. And so everything is just completely insane, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. And then that's they realize the book is where it started. And the device I use for it's a kind of a strange, it's a strange structure. A lot of the story is told as the psychic detective welcomes into himself the spirits of people that have been killed, and then you kind of get their story, and so you kind of track this. Oh,
yeah, I like that.
It was a blast to write, man. Other than the really bizarre feeling of channeling in everything that was, and the same as the version 2007, it was cathartic for me then. This was cathartic for me as well, because last year, especially March, April, May, June, it was
it was crazy.
It was apocalyptic.
Yeah.
So
we'll quit writing shit, Shawn. It starts coming to life here,
right?
Or in your next book, can you write that I win the lottery?
Yeah,
because that would be pretty sweet.
It's funny because there is this thing where, famously, I think I've brought this up on here before, where Alan Moore talked about it. Grant Morrison really talked about it with The Invisibles, but this thing where what you write can sometimes affect your reality. And so the famous example with Alan Moore is he created John Constantine Hellblazer, and he was in a pub, and John Constantine walked in and sat next to walked in and sat down next to him and ordered a pint.
Well, that makes sense though, because Alan Moore is a world-renowned wizard, so we all know that.
Yeah, well, for anybody that doesn't know it, he turned 40, and this is I don't know how many years ago. This is 20 at least
ago. Who knows? Yeah.
He turned 40, and he decided to become a practicing magician, and also Grant Morrison is as well. And so this is something that has always interested me. I am very interested in the occult. I have kind of my own version of it that I don't want to say practice is a little bit not exactly it, but it definitely informs my work.
The study of,
yes, definitely. And I don't think I'm responsible for COVID, but I definitely feel like.
All right. But I am keeping my eye on you though.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It was a very, very cathartic thing. And so now the book is available and I'm really proud of it. I think it turned out really great. And as I went through it and rewrote it this time, it went places I had no fucking clue it was going to go. It still ends exactly the same way, but the way that you get there, the third act is just,
that's awesome.
It's not what I expected it was going to be. So
yeah, and you sly dog too. I didn't hear a single whisper of this until I saw you posting the cover art done by our mutual friend John Bickness.
Yes,
who is fantastic artist, by the way.
Yeah,
if you ever get a chance, check out his stuff. I know we're going to have him on an upcoming show.
Yeah,
because that man, he knows his art and he's fantastic.
JonathanGrimArt.com.
There you
very,
go.
Very cool. Very
that
cool.
plug, baby. I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I saw that you posted the cover for it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm sitting there thinking, son of a bitch. You did that to me last time, too.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted it to come out in 2021, but I did, I don't know, something like 8 edits on the thing. I just had to get it right. And so, and I had been working on the second book, and, in 2019, I put out the first book of Shadow Play.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so I'd been working on outlining books 2 and 3 of that.
Sure.
And I had to put it down. So now I'm back there now. But yeah, I just, like I said, I realized in that Trader Joe's, and I think it was March 19th, maybe last year, I was just like, man, I'd be a fool not to go back to that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what happens. When inspiration hits, you feel that need and that pull of urgency.
Yeah.
That, I have this in me. I need to get this out right now.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
then other projects get put to the back burner, and you just got to focus all of your energy in on that. And that's how good stuff is done.
Yeah.
Not by the things that you feel like you have to work on, but by the drive of, what you want to work on.
Yeah. Yeah. Or actually, maybe it's the other way around. It's not what you want to work on. It's what you have. It's like what that drive, like I have to, this has to be done right now.
Okay, that does sound a lot better. So I'm going to edit that part out, and now I'm going to say that part to make myself sound better.
Yes, say it.
So it's not about what you want to work on. It's about what you need to work on.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great.
That's fucking great.
Yeah, that's a great quote. I like that. God,
so yeah, but
I'm excited to read it. Now, where can our listeners find it? Where can they pick
anywhere? Anywhere. Unfortunately, there's been a weird snafu with Kindle, so it's not available. It was available for pre-order on Kindle up until the day it came out, and then it disappeared.
Lovely.
So I don't know, but I have my distributor, which is Ingram, which is basically the only. The publishing industry, the 2 distributors previously were Baker Taylor and Ingram. Baker Taylor, I believe, folded, so now it's just Ingram. So
Baker Taylor, Soldier Spy.
Yes, exactly. So I have reached out to their digital support team, and they actually just emailed me yesterday, and said that there was. They didn't go into detail, but something. So they're trying to iron that out. But otherwise, you can order the paperback on Amazon. You can order it on Barnes & Noble, IndieBound, anywhere. My friend Becky, who worked at Borders as well, she got it through Dave's old bookshop right up the street that you frequent all the time. She just had him order it through. I don't know if it would be. It's either Bookshop or IndieBound is like a indie distributor that. So basically, you get it anywhere you can get a book. You can get it. If you walk into a Barnes and Noble, they're not going to have it because I'm not a big name, and obviously brick and mortar stores have had to kind of tailor what they carry. I mean, that's been going on since I worked at Borders.
But you can order it through.
You can order through them. Yeah, everybody has it. It's available on Nook. If anybody has a Nook, Barnes and Noble has the ebook, but it's just right now the Kindle. I'm hoping by next week it'll be available. So
yeah, well, that's cool. Well, I can't wait till I get my copy so I can delve into it.
You will be getting one soon, sir.
Awesome. Looking forward to that. What else do you have in the works now that you have that one out of the way?
I just finished a short story that has been driving me fucking crazy for about 2 years, and it's been done multiple times, and it was just never right, and it's finally done. And which is interesting because speaking of like zeitgeist or like influencing things, when I started writing it in 2018, I had this idea, like my mom was telling me about a friend of hers that had, they're 80s. They're in their 80s. My parents are pretty mobile for their 80s, but some of their friends are not. And this particular friend had, I think, hip surgery or something, and she could no longer go into her basement. And I don't know about you, like I try to find horror when I write about it in the world around me.
Yeah.
And I think the most horrifying thing I've learned, like I just turned 45, aging is fucking terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying. And, we try not to think about it, right? We distract ourselves. Mm-hmm. And something about this idea of this woman having this house and not being able to go into the basement. So I wrote this story called Please Believe Me about an old woman who had just had hip surgery, can't go into her basement. Her children have, long since moved out and they have families of their own. And every night somebody comes in and goes into her basement and she can't do anything about it. And it's, I don't know. I just, before I could even start writing the story, it just chilled me. So I finally finished that. And then I'm doing I'm actually with the Shadowplay series. I wanted to outline books 2 and 3. Like, I mean, we're talking like 50, 60,000 word outlines. Like it's so fucking in depth.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I wanted to know exactly where I was going before I started writing them. And so now I am actually writing the second book. So,
and that's the kind of thing I like. I like it when authors, when they know where they're going before they start.
Yeah.
So do I. Because the last thing you want to do is you don't want to invest in a bunch of books and it's, and then they turn into George Martin where they just write themselves into a corner or, or to use a TV trope there, it ends up like Lost,
That's,
you have a lot of great ideas and we're just going to throw everything at the wall there, and it gets to the point where it's like, fuck, we need to wrap this up, and then they were all dead at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Remember how we said they weren't all dead? Like, a couple of years ago, actually they are. Sorry.
Well, at the time they weren't, but they are now.
Yeah, exactly.
So technically we were telling the truth.
Yeah. I mean, that's a frustrating thing. There's been obviously Lost comes to mind. And also, and I still love this comic. I mean, I love, but there was a point in the 90s and I guess it would have ended in the 90s reading Sam Keith's The Max, which was just one of my favorite things ever. But there was a point when I realized like, I was waiting for like revelations and stuff like that. And I realized like, I don't think he's got them. Yeah. And it kind of hurt me a little bit. Like I expected something more, and maybe that's on me, and I mean, that's okay. But I still love The Max, but it definitely like, I didn't want to do that. And I've never written anything like Shadowplay before. It's so complicated. I mean, to the point where I'm like, next time to use a musical analogy, I'm not, we're about the same age. So I grew up as a Metallica fan. I closed the door on them after the Black Album, but And Justice for All is such an insanely intricate album that I totally understand why afterwards they're like, you know what? Let's hire Bob Rock, have a couple fucking beers, and never write anything that complicated again. Let's just do Inner Sandman. Like seriously, like verse, chorus, main riff, done. Like I get that because that would have probably burned them the fuck out to do justice.
Yeah.
So,
but with you right now, the way you're describing it, I'm picturing you like, like Charlie Day and Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where you have like the crime board on the wall with strings going from this picture to that picture and Post-its and notes and all kinds of.
Literally, except I had started making a murder board, but there's a program called Aeon Timeline, and I use that instead. And it's basically, you can make this timeline, and it's insane. Cause I mean, I'm going back to like the fucking 16th century.
Oh, fuck.
And yeah, I mean, I'm working in a lot of history too, like Elizabethan history and stuff like that. And I didn't, when I wrote the first book, I didn't even know that was going to be there. So, there you go.
Well, in that case, I'm very happy that you're planning it out.
Yeah, I'm not going to pull a loss for sure.
No, I wouldn't expect you to. But awesome.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'll get you a copy soon though. So
awesome. And for everyone else out there, again, the name of of Shawn's new book, Murder Virus, is available at book retailers everywhere. And to come circle back around, so Murder Virus, I arrived at that when I renamed it. And at first I hated the fucking title. But you know what? I reread I read Fight Club for the first time. I had seen the movie obviously a million times. And I've read almost all of Palinek's other books up to a certain point, but I'd never read that one because I was always like, I saw the movie first and I love the movie so much, it's going to affect the way I read the book. Yeah.
So true. I finally read the book, and it just dawned on me, like, I remember the first time I heard the name Fight Club, I'm like, that sounds so lame. but it's a simple title, but now it's come to mean something else. And so I hope that if anybody's like, Murder Virus, because again, at first I was like, that's just so on the nose and ridiculous, and it's, whatever. But no, but it makes the most sense. And honestly, The Secret Life of Murder is a little bit pretentious and it just never, I don't know. So Murder Virus. There you go.
I like it. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess I think that does it for another episode of A Most Horrible Library, unless we had any other business to attend to.
No, I think time wise, it's about pretty good episode right there.
Cool, man.
I did recently post in both our Facebook and Instagram asking if any of you fine listeners out there have any recommendations for us. We are always looking for fun, new, and exciting and gruesome, horrible, bloody things to read. So yeah, if you'd like to, by all means, pop us some suggestions.
Yeah, and I think we've got a couple things from some creators that send us stuff that we've got to get to, and we'll cover coming up real soon. So
yeah, we got that, and I recently picked up a couple new Image titles, couple new Dark Horse titles, and so we will be touching in on those probably next week.
Right on. Well, okay. So until then, for A Most Horrible Library, I am Shawn Charles Baker.
And I'm Chris Saunders.
And we will see you later.
Unless the murder virus gets us.
Yeah, that's true. It could happen.
Yeah. Well, let's see. You know what? You know what, though? It's still better than herpes.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.